Together, we can build a modern, progressive and caring Ireland. Together, we can create a future to look forward to.
Sorry, something about an Ireland for all or something like that. Anyway, Irish election campaign videos. They've always been pretty dull. They play it way too safe, even if you go back 25 years. It's not like anything risky was done, but they at least had the slightest bit of expression. Take this one by the main government party, which depicts the opposition as cowboy plumbers.
What will happen if the power to change things for the better is taken out of our hands?
It's an awful cliche, but it's a blind sight more interesting than what the opposition did, which was just a list of achievements. Like Watch Mojo, but even more insipid. Even the junior party in government made this kind of weird campaign vid where there's a photographer taking pictures of people and then it's revealed to be the party leader. Just seems kind of odd. Either way, in that election, the party with the least interesting video had the most seats before and after the vote. These things don't make a difference, and these days, few people watch, fewer people care. But there was one video recently enough which actually was memorable. This is Ben Gilroy. And this is the second in a series of election videos where he takes something he doesn't like, slogans or political parties, and hits them with a hurling stick.
Okay, so Fianna Fáil, what is there to be said about them that you don't already know? They preferred gamblers on a stock exchange to the Irish people. They caused the mess in this country, and even in opposition, they were weak as hell. They have to go.
While it wasn't seen by many despite being featured on Euronews, and Gilroy was not elected on either occasion for Europe or for the Dáil, it does, I think, represent a very outside-the-box attempt to get votes. But interestingly enough, if one looks at this whole man's career, there is a precedent for this. Gilroy has a history of using unusual marketing techniques. One I particularly enjoyed was this election leaflet he used, where as opposed to a manifesto with his ideas, he sent around a mock newspaper featuring, among other things, cartoons and photoshops, such as the Taoiseach of the day being hung by a noose, the Parliament as a tennis court, the Taoiseach as cigarettes, 20 Kennys. If smoking doesn't kill you, austerity certainly will. That's actually pretty good. An austerity board game, the Minister for Social Protection opening a suicide park, the candidate himself in a straitjacket, a billboard saying, "There's only one reason not to vote Ben Gilroy, the polls are closed," which sounds like a bad motivational Tumblr quote, the three main parties as wheelie bins, and this. This was made by Gilroy when he ran as a candidate for the Direct Democracy Ireland party, a party I'd never have known about were it not for Gilroy. And to briefly explain it, direct democracy is a system where, as opposed to our current system where we elect members of Parliament who choose to pass or reject laws, to learn more, listen to the Irish Legislation podcast as a cure for insomnia. In direct democracy, our representatives put everything to referendum and we choose the referenda. Switzerland, who uses this model, had at least 8 referendums last year. Direct Democracy Ireland proposes to do this with a series of petitions and signatures, kind of like Change.org if it had something between its legs. Take for example this petition by former party leader Jan van de Ven regarding pensions for politicians, proposing they receive a pension no higher than any other public servant. This received more upvotes than not. I mean, it's shocking that a proposal to give our representatives less money went down so well. So were the DDI in power, they would take it to the country. That's this party as best as I understand it, and this was the party that Gilroy was a part of when he made what I think is his most striking attempt at gaining attention, by creating a talk show with himself as host, with party members and affiliates as guests, called The Ben Gilroy Show, a means for Direct Democracy Ireland to get their ideas out dressed up as a chat show, and the result is so strange.
Well, welcome back. Ray, I see the animation here. It all seems very, very false to me. Maybe you'd explain that to us, because we always like a bit of humour as well, don't we, Tom? We don't take ourselves too serious.
No.
And while this show is trying to cheer up people as well and have an entertaining show, I'm quite sure after watching some of these videos, maybe they'll be sticking their heads in the oven.
A chat show with this man as host might not sound very appetising, but neither does dandruff and then Nestle made clusters. And making your own show online is a common enough thing. Maybe a little too common. I mean, it's been said before, some men will start a podcast in lieu of attending therapy.
You know, money can only get you so far with getting pussy and shit.
But the way the Direct Democracy Party went about it was so traditional. The Ben Gilroy Show is not a podcast, nor does it function as one. And I do not just mean that there's visual components, which would make listening to it a worse experience. What I mean by that is there is an attempt to try and make it to seem like it was television, like this is something one tunes into, right down to an intro, piped in audience clapping.
Join us in Studio 2.
A whole set was put together with carpets and rubber plants like the Enterprise D. But what stands out to me the most is they even made their own commercial breaks.
Thank you very much. See you after the show, after the break.
What they did not do was leave a blank space for Google ads, which some creators do. A creator this small would be yet to have them. This is ads they put in on their own, and it's just for the media company that makes the show, which is no doubt themselves, and a security company which is now defunct. It's a part of the video that can be skipped over. Conversations are stopped to make breaks for this.
What I'll do is we'll take a break and we'll pick up the story after the break and just see what led then to resignations and stuff like that. See you after the break.
Now look, to people of a certain age, being on YouTube is like being on television. Like, for instance, this gentleman.
Fuck, if I'm gonna do this, I definitely need more coffee. I'm on TV or not.
And that's fine, and even one of the big two called their YouTube channel Fine Gael TV. Aww. But stopping your show for a break just flies in the face of the advantages that come with creating online content. So it's peculiar to me that in an attempt to replicate TV, they'd even take on unnecessary disadvantages. One of the things I enjoy about podcasts, at least before Acast and that Irish woman with the irritating voice came along, was the no ads thing. But Gilroy says in a comment in this video that they hope to fund the show with ads from small online companies, and that they hope to present the show as ready to go on network television. What might hinder them was in the same comment Gilroy said he wished to use the show to talk about fluoride, the Freemen and the Freemasons. Yikes. Now this may set up the Ben Gilroy show as an amusing paranoid thriller in the manner of other Irish conspiracy theorists like Tom the Truth Seeker McGrath.
Now most people on fucking YouTube know that America faked the moon landings, all that bollocks.
Where there's some entertainment to be had amid concerns about the content creator's mental well-being, unfortunately the Ben Gilroy show is much more dull and I'd say more sinister, and this is crystallised with the first set of interviewees. The first guests are the co-founders and leaders of the party. At this time, Direct Democracy Ireland had been around for about 2 years and had already had a split, with party members criticising it for being neither direct nor democratic.
Plug myself, but I have a story in the front page of the Examiner about direct democracy.
This is not to plug yourself, huh? Okay, well,
it's they've succumbed to the ancient Irish political ailment of the split already. There's a lot of people have been disgruntled and they've walked out on it. We did a bit of investigation.
The split between whom and whom?
Between sections within the party. Delegates from Cork and Offaly walked out at a meeting last Saturday.
And what are they split over?
They're split over the fact that they're saying that those at the top are not running the organisation democratically, that the Constitution has appointed 5 permanent members to its ruling council. So therefore
5 permanent members?
Yeah, therefore it's undemocratic, and the Cork
You're
and
not
Offaly...
serious, they haven't done that,
They've done that according to their Constitution, yeah, I've seen the Constitution. So they're
well done.
Very animal fodder.
They're saying it's basically direct democracy is undemocratic.
Now, a show like this may have been a chance to address this and ease the minds of party members, because after all, this show is by the party for the party, except Gilroy denies that it is. In the aforementioned comment, Gilroy says his show will not be a propaganda piece for the party, but as they were starting out, he was short on guests. Despite an opening monologue from Gilroy saying there'll be no agendas,
We don't promise an easy ride here, but what we do promise is there are no agendas.
they just talk about their policies and how brilliant they think they are.
Democracies, a politician would never say, I'll do this for you and then not do it, because they know that it would be voted out in a matter of a few months.
Sometimes I will play devil's advocate.
This is an example of Gilroy playing devil's advocate.
Ray, what Jan suggestion is direct democracy sits like a policeman, allows government to continue to do what it does, but then pulls a handbrake if something goes wrong. Could we have used it in the last few years? While the threat of a referendum hangs over a politician, surely that would lead to better governance, would it not? It would appear to me that it's like the government is against the people in what we're saying rather than for the people. Am I right in that, or is that just us?
I think you're right.
As I said, the first 2 guests are supposed to be the party's co-founders and the party leader. But from what I can see, everybody tries to lead Direct Democracy Ireland. Depending on which year you read an article about them from, any one of these 3 men was the party leader or its founder. It's your turn now. Raymond Whitehead founded the party, having lived in Switzerland and wishing to emulate their model of direct democracy. Gilroy led it, and shortly before this began airing, he was succeeded by Jan van de Ven. There's a number on screen which you can text to donate to the DDI, receiving this text in return. The text costs 15 cents. A Paul paltry sum in comparison to the cost of the naughty numbers that used to be on the back of official PlayStation magazine, although I'd imagine there's only one of these two numbers where texting it would result in you getting fucked.
Vote number 1 Ben Gilroy for Europe, and I'm going to Europe to get our money back.
So this whole thing is a party political broadcast, which would be fine if not for Gilroy having said in the comments it wouldn't be just that. And that's why I think this is all just a bit disingenuous. But also this whole thing was hosted on a channel called Ireland's Independent Network.
And welcome to Ireland's independent network, IIN. We are a brand new streaming television service which we hope to give a voice to a number of groups throughout the length and breadth of this country whose voice never really gets heard.
Which in the introduction Gilroy pitched as an alternative to RTE. They posed as a competitor to the national broadcaster, so the scope of the feigned ambition is to be admired. It's sweet in a way since it's just a YouTube channel. The name was probably chosen deliberately so that if questioned Gilroy could say, "Yeah, but we're actually independent." I mean, this is the same man who unironically said he studied at the University of Life. IIN doesn't quite roll off the tongue like RTE, KPMG or David Davin Power, but if Ireland's independent network, IIN, did take off, it wouldn't be independent at all, because it's so hopelessly partisan to the DDI. But credit where credit's due. They are putting it up to RTE and TV3 by noticing a real gap in the market. I mean, a chat show, we haven't had any of those apart from the Saturday Night Show, the Late Late Show, the Tommy Tiernan Show, Saturday Night with Miriam, Kenny Live, Tonight with Craig Doyle, Ryan Confidential, Secrets with Jerry Ryan, The Social with Craig Doyle, The Dumphy Show, Sweet Talk with Cynthia Murku and Claire McKeown, Later On 2 with Claire McKeown, Tuberty Tonight, and Craig Doyle Live. If at first you don't succeed again. Once one parks their concern for the easily led, the interview itself is just kind of pathetic. The bulk of the interview is the three men talking about what would be different under direct democracy. According to them, broken promises would be a thing of the past, and they illustrate this with clips of Fine Gael and Labour going back on declarations made in the 2011 campaign. Really not seeing how this isn't propaganda. Gilroy is also always giggling after the clips, and sometimes his transitions are a little abrupt.
I'm sorry, you'll have to excuse me laughing there. It's a very serious matter. I mean, it really is a serious matter. The country's destroyed.
Now that's a U-turn, and it doesn't stop there. Gilroy says,
Isn't it the system rather than the individuals? I know we might have been having a little go at the individuals.
But here's what he means by having a little go at the individuals.
That guy, to my mind, should be in jail.
That's a bit of a reach. However, I don't know how tough our prisons will be under direct democracy. I think a gesture of good faith would be to discuss the potential pitfalls of direct democracy and its downsides. And what are they? Well, I've no idea because they don't discuss them on the show, but the fact they aren't discussed just makes me suspicious. And I'm not sure the people around Gilroy understood the disadvantages of direct democracy either, because Gilroy was supported in the Meath East by-election by the Christian Solidarity Party, who said he can be trusted on the abortion issue, but from their perspective, he can't. If it's the will of the people, direct democracy would have to legislate for it, and as we learned a couple of years ago, it certainly is the will of the people. I think Gilroy and company thought with this show they were going to do for direct democracy what Top Gun did for military recruitment, but for me it's closer to what Taken did for backpacking in Europe. So while having the party's two bigwigs as your first guest is pretty brazen, what Gilroy does after this is arguably worse. He has on a series of activists. One of them had already been a Direct Democracy Ireland candidate for Europe by the time this was uploaded, which was never disclosed. Tom Darcy. Perhaps Darcy just forgot to mention he'd been a member of the DDI. I mean, when questioned about the European Parliament, he had no answer for who the President of the Parliament was, the last country to join the Eurozone, and who the President of the Council was. Do I know the answer to any of these? No. But I'd like my MEPs to. That's why I vote for people who I think are smarter than I am. Some people might say I'm being excessive, but some people also say Marx and Sparks. Ugh. Oh, and get a load of what this guy thinks makes him like everyone else.
Well, like everybody, I suppose when I got married at 18, I was in the family coal business.
He's just like me. The other guests are all from groups like the Land League and other anti-eviction activists. You see, Gilroy's path into politics was through him, like so many others, entering into a mortgage before the crash, which he subsequently couldn't pay off. He was a self-employed electrician who in 2007 got a mortgage for a house in Navan and paid an interest-only mortgage till he could pay no more. And off the back of this, he made some media appearances, which I think were his first ones. It's interesting to watch them now, because in the manner of a boy being wrestled into his communion suit, he wears the same suit in each appearance. The good clothes. Was this his only suit, or was it a ploy to seem like a regular guy? And I think it's the former, because as far as I can tell, that's who he was. And from there he led anti-eviction protests and racked up hundreds of thousands of views halting evictions and arguing with sheriffs. So he's like a cowboy, but to be fair, that image worked for Ronald Reagan and Albert Reynolds.
They've called it the country and western image. Has it hurt you in Dublin?
I think that that description of country and western image is rather offensive.
It's clips from these videos which are used in the intro, and they're fairly serious in tone for videos used in an intro which is way too whimsical. Here you have evictions, a horrible thing to happen, being used as highlights set to music that sounds like somebody slipping on a banana peel on You've Been Framed. The part that killed me was in the first episode they used clips of past interviewees, like what The Late Late had done in the past. But because they'd only done one episode, it's all clips of the two Direct Democracy guys. It's like when the Clerks cartoon did a clip show episode, but they did it for episode 2, so all the flashbacks were to the pilot. The DDI was involved in several anti-eviction protests and opposing auctions for distressed assets, and it did so with all these other organisations and subgroups like Defend Our Homes, Freedom from All Debt, People for Economic Justice, but an organisation that Gilroy tried to deny any association with was the Freemen of the Land movement. Does your head hurt yet?
Did you know that the courts in Ireland operate under Admiralty Maritime Law jurisdiction, which literally means the law of the sea?
They're maritime courts. They're of the sea. That's why they have the master of the High Court. He's the master of the ship. That's why you're in the dock.
The Freemen regard themselves as answerable to God and not the law. They're special. The rules do not apply to them. YouTube user Saoirse Joe made a video demonstrating Gilroy's ideological links to this movement, and in it included a pamphlet of what the Freemen believe. Most of it is just nonsense like income tax is voluntary, but my personal favourite of the lot is in reference to the law. It says, "To understand is to stand under," which sounds like the sort of thing a guy would say when he gets stuck talking to his girlfriend's parents.
The thing is, I just go through that tech, and it's not how to run from an SP. It's PTSSP, how to shatter suppression, confront shatter suppression. You apply it, it's like boom.
There's also a part of this Freeman thingy which insists upon being referred to as part of a clan. So in 2013, businessman Francis Cullen, when in court, referred to himself as Francis of the Clan Cullen. And as for Ben Gilroy?
We also asked Mr. Gilroy about this poster on his door.
My father left me a seal many years ago, and it's of the ancient clan of Gilroy.
And what does Gilroy mean? It's a species of trout. Delicious. Either way, representatives from all these groupings apart from the Freemen make up guests that appear on the Ben Gilroy show. But the guest I find most bizarre is the second guest in the first episode. This is John Wilson. Wilson, the nephew of the early 90s Taoiseach of the same name, is a Garda whistleblower. Decades ago, he phoned into Marion Finucane's radio show to speak out against Gardaí being forced to have beards despite men like him having skin conditions that necessitate them. But he made waves when he blew the lid on the penalty point system, where a lucky few could have their penalty points squashed by the Gardaí. An incredible public service which resulted in him quitting a job he loved long before he planned to do. And it's because of this that I think Wilson lends this programme some credibility that it frankly doesn't deserve. Wilson is not a Direct Democracy Ireland affiliate, although not because Gilroy didn't try.
You didn't dip your toe in the DDI pool, John?
He says no, without saying no, basically. Wilson did end up joining Sinn Féin before it was cool. Before, they were led by Mary Lou MacDonald, a woman who likes to send out a tweet just to let us know that she's got nothing to say. But what I find strangest of all is this is actually a pretty good interview. Gilroy has done his research and is an excellent listener, although it is Gilroy, so there's still some oddities.
And we all know what happened to Claire Daly. She was subsequently arrested on suspicion of drunk driving and handcuffed. I mean, she's about 5'0", but they had to handcuff Claire Daly. I mean,
she's a feisty woman now. I'd put handcuffs on her too.
I did enjoy the Wilson interview. I think it's a pity it's trapped in this weird party political broadcast, but Wilson is a grown-up. He knew who Gilroy was, so would have had some notion of what he was getting into. So if the person on the receiving end isn't taking any offence, then I won't take any offence on their behalf. The second episode ends with a sketch with what is supposed to be the then Minister for Finance and God's gift to satirists, Michael Noonan, talking to Gilroy off the record.
And at the end of the show, a lot of people may not know that I'm actually very friendly with Michael Noonan. And I did a Skype call, and we hope to do a Skype call maybe every show with Michael Noonan. And I'll play the Skype call. We did it earlier today. The first question I asked Michael Noonan is, did he tell his friends Enda Kenny and Radcar in the cabinet that we were friends?
Now, Ben, you know yourself, I can't be telling the boys everything we be talking about. I don't even tell them we be talking in the first place. Now, you know yourself. Now, quick question, Ben. This is strictly off the record now, isn't it?
Of course, Michael. It's always off the record when I talk to you. I did promise you that.
Portrayal of me was fiction.
It's not the most unflattering depiction of Michael Noonan, but watching it I did think, thank goodness deepfakes aren't a thing. It's clear to anybody with a brain that it's not actually Noonan. However, Gilroy never does a disclaimer to say that it isn't, and I'm not entirely convinced he'd correct the record if somebody thought that it was him. I'd give anybody else the benefit of the doubt that this was just a bit of fun, but not Gilroy. The second episode is entitled Ben Gilroy Show Number 2, Finn End. What, they're packing it in after 2 episodes? What is this, the Golden Palace? But surprisingly, the show did carry on for a 3rd episode, but that was it. The channel has not uploaded since. If there was any explanation as to why it ended, I couldn't find it. And what a curious little endeavour this whole show was. I think on a technical aspect, it wasn't superb, but it was an awful lot better than, say, GB News was with substantially less money.
Described as being on its knees due to the ongoing travel restrictions. So a day of action is being held by the UK travel... Sorry, I'm laughing because it's like banging the street. Calling on...
There's a man over there with a hammer. That's what she's saying.
I think the idea of an alternative media talk show that blurs the lines between new and trad media is exciting, but that's only what this show posed as being, not what it wanted it to be. And I think we kind of ended up getting that anyway with Ireland Unfiltered. Dion Fanning is kind of Rivita, but at least he's not a bigger personality than the people he interviews. In the time since, Gilroy has left the DDI for the Irish Freedom Party, also known as Irexit Freedom, the fishing water people. €215 billion worth of fish has been robbed from Irish waters by EU trawlers.
I must have been out that night.
And Irexit, the National Party, Renua and the DDI formed an anti-lockdown alliance party. Gilroy has never managed to get elected, and that's probably for the best. Sometimes I find the man entertaining, but he's an awful messer, and we've got too many of those in Parliament already. As stated earlier, when talking about broken promises from politicians, Gilroy said the problem was that the system allowed for it more so than the individuals themselves. So while I have a personal distaste for Gilroy's methods, this all started with him having difficulty with his mortgage when the recession kicked in. So I reserve my disdain for those who caused this mess. Property developers, bankers, journalists and former government ministers may look at this man and see a monster, but it may be a monster they made. Gilroy is getting on in years and looks no closer to attaining office, so surely a time as a political activist is coming to an end, if we could ever have called him that in the first place. Technically, men who masturbate in cinemas watch a lot of movies, but we wouldn't call them film buffs. Slán go fóill.
I'm the best MC in North Kerry.